Welcome to today's webinar. I'm Damien Chabunia, Director of Industry and Product Marketing at Dude Solutions, and I will be your host and moderator today. Dude Solutions, by the way, is the #1 software as a service enterprise asset management provider, and we have an exciting topic to cover today, improving public perception and engagement, and specifically how consumer technology is shaping the experiences that local governments deliver for their citizens. We're actually going to hear a great example of that today. And with that, it's my privilege to introduce our two speakers today. Sam Chapin is a solutions consultant with Dude Solutions. She has been with Dude Solutions for the past 4 years, working with government organizations to help identify operational needs and solve them using innovative technology and specializing in community development operations. Welcome, Sam. And Jerome Keene is Senior Planner at QK, a full-service engineering design and construction management company. He has over 10 years of planning experience in both the private and public sector. Jerome holds a Bachelor of Arts in Geography from California State University in Fresno. He also has a Master's of Applied Science in Community Development from the University of Nebraska in Lincoln. And he has served as the Community Development Director for the City of Delano in California for the past 5 years, where he has overseen the implementation of Dude Solutions SmartGov in an effort to improve permit processing throughout the department. He has worked either as an employee or hired staff for numerous jurisdictions, where he has been able to understand the needs of providing customer service as well as accountability for the public. Welcome, Jerome. And with that, I'm going to hand things over to Sam.
Sounds good, Damien. Thank you. And before we get started, I want to go over a couple housekeeping items. At the bottom of your screen are multiple application widgets you can use. All the widgets are resizable and movable, so feel free to move them around to get the most out of your desktop space. You can expand your slide area or maximize it to full screen by clicking on the arrows in the top right corner. If you have any questions during the webcast, you can submit them through the Q&A widget. We will try to answer those during the webcast, but if a fuller answer is needed or we run out of time, it will be answered later via email. Please know we do capture all questions. Additional materials are available in the Resource Center. We encourage you to download any resources or links that you may find useful. For best viewing experience, we recommend using a wired internet connection and closing any programs or browser sessions running in the background that could cause issues. Webinars are bandwidth intensive, so closing any unnecessary browser tabs will help conserve your bandwidth. The webcast is being streamed through your computer, so there is no dial-in number. For the best audio quality, please make sure your computer speakers or headset are turned on and the volume is up. Some networks cause slides to advance more slowly than others, so logging off your VPN is recommended. If your slides are behind, pushing F5 on your keyboard will refresh the page. Again, that's F5. You can find additional answers to some common technical issues located in the Help widget at the bottom of your screen or the Troubleshooting Guide in the Resource Center. An on-demand version of the webcast will be available and sent to your inbox approximately 24 hours after the live event. So that concludes the housekeeping items for today. And just to kick off the webinar, we're really going to be focused on 3 main topics today. One would be why reputation is so important. The second topic we'll cover, Jerome with the City of Delano will discuss their success in transitioning to software for their city. And then we'll talk a little bit about making continual improvements. How do we measure success? All right, at the very end, we will do a live Q&A session. So as we go through the webinar today, please feel free to use that Q&A widget at the bottom of your screen to submit those questions to us. All right, so I figured today, since we're talking about reputation, I want to start out by defining what reputation is. And it's an outcome that results from the accumulated decisions, actions, and behaviors of the people within an organization and how these are perceived. And I'm sure if you guys think back, you can probably remember a really good customer service experience that you've had in the past, and equally, a customer service experience that maybe wasn't so great. And the chances are these experiences have left an impression on you, and you may have a perception of that product or service in the future. So what gives a city a strong reputation? When we boiled it down, studies show that these are the three things people think build a strong reputation for cities and towns. So 37.5% of a city's reputation comes from perceptions of effective government, includes the city's safety, leadership, infrastructure, and social, economic, and environmental policies. 36.7% involves perceptions of an appealing environment, which includes the city's beauty and the experiences it offers. And 25.9% comes from perceptions of an advanced economy, including financial stability, growth potential, and favorable business environment. So in each of those, you can see that perception is really important, right? And really from someone's standpoint, so from a citizen, from a homeowner, from a contractor, or folks that are looking to do business with you guys, there's really three key areas in which they judge your reputation. All right, so we're going to go through those today. The first one is competence. So really they're looking at how the organization instills confidence through quality, safety, and security. Transparency, I'm sure you guys have heard that word before. How the organization builds trust through openness and integrity. And guardianship. It's how the organization or the jurisdiction creates goodwill by demonstrating care and consideration for others' interests over their own. So just to put a little context behind that, I had a couple examples I wanted to run through with you guys. You guys probably recognize a lot of these logos up there. Disney, Apple, Netflix, Coca-Cola, Amazon. There's something that these companies and brands have in common. And ultimately, all these brands make you feel good when you use their product or service. So take Disney, for example. Maybe you remember or have a memory of an adrenaline rush you got on a ride with maybe one of your best friends. Or Amazon, every time you order something, it's so easy, and you're excited to see it in the next 2 days show up on your doorstep. Or even when you think of Coca-Cola, and you go to the convenience store or the grocery store, and you see a Coca-Cola with your name on it. It just makes you feel good. All these companies have been really good at adapting to change and moving to where their customers want them to go. On the other hand, right, we think about these companies a little differently. All right, we may even think the opposite of what we thought of the ones on the prior slide. Really this is due to their inability to change and adapt to the needs of their customers. Their competitors did it better. They did a better job with change. And I know I'm going through these examples, and I understand that you guys are not a brand and you're not a company like Sears or like Apple. But at the end of the day, all right, you are competing with other jurisdictions out there to land the next best restaurant or the next industry that may drive more jobs and more tax revenue to your community. So today we'll be focused a lot on how to make those changes, right? How to get some confidence behind that. And enforce some of the changes in technology to help advance some of the operations that you guys are currently running there in your jurisdictions. So what I wanted to talk about today, I like to go back. I'm a big quotes person, and I find this quote to be really fitting for today. And the most dangerous phrase in the language is, "We've always done it this way." So if we're unwilling to change or we get stuck in our current ways, we will eventually become the Kodaks and Blockbusters of the world. So we really have to drive that change. So when you think about it from a perspective standpoint, we talk about this a lot at my work. I put Grace Murray Hopper, her timeline in there, and December 9th, 1906 through January 1st, 1999, she made a lot of impact between those dates. She really drove technology for the U.S. Navy. That's her background, and she was determined to make the right changes to make them or keep them moving forward. So at the end of the day, you have to decide which side are you on, right? Take this comparison, for example, Apple versus BlackBerry. I'm sure you guys may have an iPhone or maybe an Android. Maybe some of you guys out there still have some BlackBerries. But I think, really from that perspective, Apple has outperformed BlackBerry, and they were willing to make the necessary changes to drive the market. And as you guys can see today, they continue to do that. They continue to lead the market. So when making changes, you guys should keep this in mind. From the customer standpoint, what will be different in their life when they have this service? Will they think positively when they talk or recommend our services to future residents and business owners? Will this create new growth opportunities that will benefit our community? Or will this increase their trust in our organization and ultimately they do more business with us? So just a couple things to keep in mind. Even add a little bit more context further, I'll pull up a quick example. And really this example is supporting online services, so services that we can offer our citizens, offer our business owners, right? So how do we make some of these processes easier on them, right? How do we enhance the communication with them? What if it was as easy as going in and ordering a pizza delivery on Friday afternoon for that evening, and making that comparison with, maybe putting an application for a new permit in the system. How can we make that, comparison or make that really simple? Right? What if we can track our permit or our project status like we can that pizza? Right? We can see up to the point it's delivered to our front doorstep, right? Giving them more control over the information, giving them information that can make them feel empowered, right? Also helps reduce potentially some phone calls there at the office. So that's really going to be our focus today. I really wanted to get a little bit of interaction here on the front end just to understand the audience a little bit better. All right, and I know you guys are all striving to make impact in your community, but would love to hear from the group a little bit about where you guys are today. All right, where are some challenges that we may be potentially seeing in our community? And I'm going to go ahead and present a poll question, and you guys should see that up on the screen. The question is, what challenges are you facing when it comes to advancing technology in your department? So just to read through a couple of the answer options, all right, fear of change. And these are examples that we hear a lot from some of the clients that we work with. Fear of implementation, getting buy-in from leadership and elected officials, aging workforce, lack of resources, integrating disparate processes. So I'll leave that up on the screen for a minute or two just to give everybody an opportunity to answer. All right, I'll give you guys another few seconds here, and I'll go ahead and flip it. I am going to share out the results with everyone so you guys can also see the mix of jurisdictions that are on and what are some of the challenges that they're facing today. All right, so you guys should be looking at those results. It looks like from the group, we've got about 29% fear of change, 32.7% of implementation, getting buy-in from leadership and elected officials, about 40%, aging workforce, 23% lack of resources. So all these are pretty, sounds like from the group, these are all some pretty big challenges that you're facing from leadership and other areas. So hopefully today, one of the takeaways that you'll have is, one, understanding that other folks out there are experiencing some of the same things that you are, but also maybe have taken away some techniques or some recommendations or advice from Jerome on how to make that process a little bit easier for you guys. So without further ado, we just talked about how and why reputation is so important. Today, Jerome's going to talk about or walk us through how their reputation has changed in the city of Delano after implementing software to help manage some of their processes. All right, Jerome, I'll hand it on over to you.
Thanks for that introduction. So today we're going to talk about the city of Delano. For those of you that don't know where the city of Delano is, it's located within the Central Valley of California within Kern County. It's actually the second largest city in Kern County. It has a population listed of about 53,000, but about 8,000 of those are permanent residents, so I don't really count those. So it's more like 45,000 people. In 2014 was when the city adopted SmartGov as its preferred permitting software. I had been working with the city for about 6 months at that point, and on contract with my current employer, and the city was, typical city, maybe in the 80s and 90s, taking permits around by hand to the various departments and getting sign-off, and that wasn't working. There were very upset builders in town, contractors, but mostly the developers in town had heard the reputation of the city, that they were doing business. They had already heard how hard it was to do business there, and they were always concerned about time frames and their timelines because, as you know, developers have certain time frames that they have to meet also, maybe with their financing or their construction schedules or what have you. So working with the city was very difficult for a lot of outsiders. And what ended up happening was with the implementation of SmartGov, the city was able to rein in their permit review process and make significant strides. So the first slide that I have is a slide that shows up on my dashboard in SmartGov every time I open the program, which is a web-based program, so I have access to it anywhere. And you can see the average days to issue a permit was all the way up at 285 days. And over time, we saw it decline, and then it peaked up when we had more volume. Also, we had to make adjustments internally, so you may have some adjustments that need to be made over time. That's not to say it's going to be perfect. It won't be, but you will see improvement. I can guarantee it. And what we saw with our staff of really one permit tech and 1.5 building inspectors, one was part-time, was a decline in days it took to issue permits, mostly because those departments that were taking so long and holding permits were getting it every department was getting them at the same time. So it allowed everybody to review it simultaneously, as well as hold people accountable, as you could set up time frames for permit reviews, and it lets the reviewer know maybe it's coming due or it's past due, and you can set alerts and various mechanisms so that people are aware that maybe they're running behind, maybe they're off schedule, but it also allows people to hold each other accountable, especially that permit tech. When you're utilizing a system that, is more manual, such as just having the permit plans and passing it around, you can't know what the status is at a given time because one person has that file. You can have a permit tech that's taken it in and maybe knows when it was taken in and how many days it's been in, but you don't necessarily know who's reviewed it, who's already approved it, or what comments that they have. So the simultaneous nature of the program allows every department to be held accountable. And that's really the basis for what we were talking about earlier, is how do you improve your reputation? You be accountable and you improve over time. So along with that, the average days declined, but you also saw, permits increase as time went on, mostly because our reputation improved and more people wanted to do business with the city. Over time, we started getting more single-family homes, where the city didn't get any residential building permits for almost 4 years. So there was an influx of development that occurred, and because we had, SmartGov available, we were able to be prepared when that wave of development occurred, and we were easily prepared to take it on. So how did we measure success? Well, one of the issues was the bigger building permits were taking years, literally years, to go through the process and get approved because of the haphazard system that the city had implemented. With SmartGov, we were able to take in things like a 100-room apartment, 100-room hotel, and track all our inspections, track all our permit reviews, and be on top of it when there were questions or what remaining items needed to be done to final that building. It would have never gone as smoothly. It would have never been approved in a timely manner that was mandated by the developers at the time if we didn't have SmartGov. It's plain and simple. The city at the time, was passing around files, and the inspection cards were manual. So you couldn't know if something was signed off or not. Did fire review it? Have they signed off? Can we, move on to the next step of construction? On top of that, at the same time the hotel was going on, we were, the city also had an 8-screen movie theater under construction. Tracking all these things, while the introduction was going on, I pulled up the inspection history just for the hotel. We have 120 pages of inspection records just for that movie theater that I was able to pull up in about a minute and a half to see where it was and how many inspections we accounted for and how much information is available in case you need it. Because that's always the issue with reputation, is being able to pull up information to kind of justify what you've done and justify where you're at in the process. If you're not able to pull up records, which the city prior to 2013, finding inspection records of whether things were finalized, whether things were completed, who went out and did the inspection, and if they completed it is almost impossible because they were all manual records. And most of them are out in a storage container in a box, in all honesty. This allows the city to be held accountable whenever and almost wherever you are. You can pull it up. I pull it up on my phone if I need to, but you can pull it up on any web browser and answer questions to a council member, planning commissioner, member of the public, to give them exactly where the permit is. It allows you to track notes. The accountability factor for the city is of the utmost importance. Your reputation leads to what people say about the city. What I always preached to the community development department, which was planning and building, was if we make a mistake or if we make, some sort of judgment that's incorrect, we need to have it documented of what happened. Because what happens if you end up being wrong is they don't just say the building department or the planning department, they say the city. So it affects everybody. And what ended up happening was, with the success that the city had with SmartGov in the building department, it grew to not just building but planning, code enforcement, the finance department for business license, city clerk for Public Records Act requests, engineering department for encroachment permits, grading permits, public works for their work orders, minor repairs on roads, sewer lines, water lines, and risk management for, renting out of city facilities. So over time, there was value seen, and the convincing of other departments and elected officials to expand its use became very easy at that point. And what it prevented kind of the communication silos on a permit, where it allows everybody to see what everybody's doing. If I'm working on a permit and nobody else has the information, that information stays with me. I'm siloed and no one else can get to it. the collaborative factor of SmartGov allows everybody to see maybe what issues somebody have and pass that information on to the applicant. People view, when you submit a permit to the building department, they want to go through the building department. They may not want to deal with the other 4 or 5 departments that are actually reviewing the permit. They want to go to one place. And SmartGov will allow that department to kind of take control of that permit process. The way it was going before was they would simply say, go talk to engineering, go talk to, the fire department, and maybe they would solve the issues with that department, but it wasn't getting back to building, and building wouldn't know if the permit was okay to release, if it was okay to final, because you require a fire final before we could final the permit and give a certificate of occupancy. So removing the communication silos is really important, and being as collaborative as possible is what SmartGov allowed the city to do in this aspect. And as you could see from that first slide, it drastically decreased the amount of time that the city needed to issue a building permit. Not only that, they implemented new processes for residential permits that allowed 13, 14, 15 permits to be issued at once for maybe a specific model type that had already been pre-approved, which they couldn't do. And it doesn't require a lot of staff to implement either. It allows fewer staff to maybe manage the permit, so your communication circle is a little bit smaller, so that a lot of people maybe aren't involved in transferring that information to the public. The use of the public portal also has helped with maybe some agencies that are or applicants that are further away. In the Central Valley, the cities are 30, 40 miles apart. So some of the major centers like Bakersfield is located 40 miles south of the city. And instead of having someone drive 80 miles in a day to drop off permits, they can simply email it or drop it into the portal. So there's also that customer service aspect that has helped to rehabilitate the reputation of the department. The visibility aspect of this, if you're just throwing stuff out and issuing permits, you don't necessarily how that sausage is being made. And the public portal does allow people to actually see what's going on and where your permit is in the process, so that they know that you're working, which is a big thing, because I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I've worked both public and private, and the perception is government employees, are not the most diligent. I take offense to that, because I know all government employees do their job as it's assigned to them. But being able to see where it's at in the process is really important, because you can see the permit moving through the process, which is the ultimate goal. And again, that increases credibility, that increases people's perception of the department if they actually see it moving through. I present all kinds of, data that is exported from SmartGov to city council members. I present them to developers. I present them to other department heads, so they can see how that sausage is being made. And as an example, I've pulled a couple of the things that I use in SmartGov. This is one of the GIS components, and you can see obviously where all the residential permits have been pulled in the city of Delano, more towards the south end. But you can see that it's not just a few. For a department of 2.5 people, 200 permits is a lot to get through. And being able to track all the info, where they're all at in the process, whether they've been finalized, can we issue certificate of occupancy, have fees been paid? Another issue that the city was having was different people were calculating fees, and making sure that you're consistent through the process and issuing the same amount of fees, making sure you're not having to issue refunds, and then also completing the process. That allowance for consistency by creating a workflow that can be repeated over and over again is really important, and then people understand what the process is. And that, again, as that process is repeated by developers or contractors in town, it gets easier and easier for everybody involved. In terms of other items, you can track where things occur in town. Code enforcement cases for the city is, a big thing. But not only the cases, you can pull, data tables that show what type of violations you have. It's all a matter of how you design it to work for you, which is what I really appreciate about the software. Is it's easy to change and it's easy to get information out of it that is meaningful. Obviously, a lot of the city council members didn't realize how big of a problem abandoned vehicles were in town. They didn't understand that it was an actual violation in the municipal code that was enforced. And being able to show them graphically, I mean, this is just since October, that there were, over approximately 70 abandoned vehicles, just violations alone for that in town that have been opened, was pretty amazing to some of them. But just generally the general volume of violations and the types and the breakdown, all these things are really important in terms of showing visibility. I try and do, whenever I can, updates at city council to show these statistics. Weekly, SmartGov automatically exports reports of all the buildings that were finalized, valuation of the construction, and the number of permits and where they were, and it's sent to the city manager and other pertinent department heads just so that they get an idea of the activity that's going on. And all these items allow for significant visibility of how your organization is operating, and the ability to show it is, and being transparent to the public in how their permit is going is how you build trust with the public. Because in all honesty, they're coming to you for answers, so they're already kind of on their heels. You kind of have to shepherd them through the process, apart from maybe like the 5% of contractors and developers that do business all the time. For the most part, most people that come to a government office are looking for answers, and being transparent with those answers and getting them in a timely fashion is a good way to increase your perceived reputation with the community. Lastly, with the ability of everybody to see the information, that institutional knowledge that maybe you've had. I know when I worked at Madera County, which is also in the Central Valley of California, we had people who had worked 35, 40 years in a department, and getting their knowledge out of their head was extremely important for us to continue. They were obviously part of the department before a lot of the permitting technology, was deployed maybe in like the late 90s, early 2000s. And at Madera County, they had limited things that had been documented over time. With SmartGov and the city, we're now able to put in notes of discussions, meetings, letters, notices, everything, so everybody knows what's happened maybe on this permit in terms of history. Again, that whole inspection history isn't lost over time. It stays with it forever, and it's easy to get that information out of the system. In terms of passing it on, it's as much information as you want to pass on. These type of things take some time to set up, and whatever investment you put in is what you're going to get out of it. It's really important that you identify key staff of who is able to be kind of like a champion for this type of implementation, and that they help those that are in the mode maybe of, I don't like this because this isn't the way we've done it for the last 10 years. The reason you're changing is because the way you've done it hasn't been working. And being able to communicate what you're looking to achieve and identify maybe key individuals to help push that message along is extremely important in terms of the success of what you get out of SmartGov or just any program in local government. So making sure you can pass that on is important again, the longevity of the department. So we just kind of wanted to check in, make sure, you know, we're doing better than we were the day before. I mean, you have to check daily, and having the dashboard pop up every day is a constant reminder for me of we're making improvements. And when we don't make improvements, we make adjustments. I don't try and be perfect, because I know a perfect system doesn't exist. I try and handle 90% of what comes through the door in the same fashion, because I know there will be special situations and you will have to deviate from your normal process. To be flexible, but understand that you can set up a workflow and it'll work for 90% of items, which is good, which is great. That's an A-. But you still need to have flexibility. And when people get frustrated that you're being flexible in your own department, you got to explain to them it's the end goal we're trying to achieve. The end goal is what's important and what increases the public's perception of your agency. And being flexible will improve your relationship with the public. Forcing them into everybody into the same box is not reasonable, because every situation is different. Yes, everybody's applying for the same permit or the same process, but more often than not, the situation is a little bit different in each instance. And making those small tweaks or adjustments when they come up, you know, is okay. When you're constantly having the same problem, though, then adjust the process. And the system allows you to make those adjustments very easily. We've gone through various iterations of how we calculate fees, what information we want to collect. Sometimes, usually it's more information that we want. It's strictly a matter of identifying that issue as it comes up, and is it a reoccurring issue? If it's a reoccurring issue, adjust the process. But our goal is always to be improving and not stay stagnant, always evaluating the process and making sure we're making sound decisions to make the experience better for the general public and the customers that come through the door. Because we're going to have to see them every day. Face it, for me, it's a little bit different, but for the city as a whole, you're going to have the same developers that own property in town coming through the process and making sure that that process is consistent and easily repeatable and fair for the most part. When it's not implemented consistently, how is that fair? And being consistent with everybody that comes through the door, but having a little bit of flexibility for the overall process, again, I cannot stress enough that the improvements made by the city, I had one council member tell me that I cut off 70% of his phone calls through the implementation of SmartGov. I've had outside consultants say before SmartGov, the building department was one of the hardest, if not the hardest, to deal with in the state of California. And this is a firm that had offices all up and down the state. And now we get donuts from contractors. We get various things to show appreciation for us helping them through the process, which I've had staff tell me that these type of things never happened before. And that's kind of another way to judge, are we improving? Are we making the process easier? So that's really kind of the rundown of that. And I kind of jumped through how do we keep improving. But, the statistics and the ability to do reporting is another big key in terms of tracking your progress. We have, I think, daily reports that show just permits that have been in the system for 7 days that we want to get out, and that's sent out every day so that we can follow up on items. You can come up with different tactics, different methods that suit your own organization to make sure you're tracking that you're getting better. But having reports and having hard data and measurables SmartGov allows you to establish those and just make sure that you're seeing that improvement over time. I kind of told the department that I expected, days to go down, but at some point I expected them to go up again, because that's kind of the nature of the beast. Once you get good at something, people recognize it, and then maybe you get flooded with, more permits. So we have to figure out a way to either adjust our workloads to accommodate those, or we just get better at our craft. And coming up with different methods to cut down the review time, we kind of used Dropbox and other we use other kind of cloud storage methods to move permits along. We went strictly electronic, applications also, which allowed people to get their revisions in more quickly, and allowed them to be forwarded to maybe third-party reviewers. We also use one of our, licenses for an outside agency. Kern County Fire is located in Bakersfield, again, 40 miles away. Rather than FedExing them a set of hard copy plans, we allow them to log into SmartGov, and they'll review the permits in SmartGov simultaneously as we do. Whereas there was a lag time and there was some confusion maybe on what set of plans they had versus what we were reviewing, those items just cut down on your review time. So I would just say, on these things, keep reviewing, keep some sort of data analytics as part of your, overall oversight of the review process, but understand that markets change, your clientele may change, and you'll have to make adjustments at some point. Don't get discouraged if the numbers start changing. Use that as a reason to make an improvement to the system. I think this is an interactive one, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I can hop in there, Jerome. That was fantastic. Sure. Thank you for going through that with us. At the end here, we just wanted to do kind of a quick little challenge for everybody. And from what you've heard today and maybe some of the things that have been going on there in your organization, we just wanted you to kind of brainstorm 2 things you think could change that would impact the perception of your department. And I'll repeat that question too as we go to the poll. So hoping you guys will all participate. We'll share out the results just like we did in the first poll today. But what 2 things could change that would impact the perception of your department? So some of the common ones that we hear: consolidate into one system of record, getting technology in place to help manage processes, communication internally with other departments and staff, more online services for the public, reporting, understanding what data is telling us and making modifications, preserving institutional knowledge. And of course, if you guys can think of other things that would be impactful, please shoot that over to us in the chat. So I'll give everybody a couple minutes to fill that out, and then I'll share out the results with you guys. All right, I'll give everybody a couple more seconds, and then we'll share out the results. All right. So just to recap the results of that, so it looks like 33% consolidate into a single system of record, 47% getting technology in place to help manage processes, 30% communication internally with other departments or staff, more online services at about 47%, reporting at 20%, understanding what the data is telling us and making modifications, 20%, and 30% preserving institutional knowledge. Very good. Thank you guys for participating in that. What we're going to do next, just to keep the webinar moving forward, we are going to jump into our live Q&A session. However, I just had one quick thing I wanted to mention before we get into the Q&A session. We had some really good questions come through as we were going through the webinar today. If you guys really enjoyed our talk today with Jerome on the topic of reputation and improving perception and engagement, we do have an annual conference that we host every year. This year it'll be in Raleigh, May 5th through the 8th, where we will be touching more on reputation as well as other hot topics in the community development world. So please let us know if that's something that you're interested in attending, and we'll go ahead and jump into the Q&A. And Damien, I'll hand it over to you.
Sounds great. Thank you, Sam. So we had a number of questions come through, so I'll just pull up the queue here. This first one is from Brandon, and it's for you, Jerome. Oftentimes, the hardest part is to get buy-in from your frontline employees because they're often the last ones involved in the change. And the question is, did you allow your frontline employees to have a say in the development of the SmartGov solution for the city?
Yeah. What we did, I think staff, higher level staff made the decision to go with SmartGov for various reasons, which I think is part of the next question. But in terms of kind of crafting the process, the frontline staff is the most important. They're going to be the ones talking to the public, fielding the most questions, and being the face of the department. So a lot of the reputation of your department falls on those frontline employees in terms of their ability to provide answers and their ability to shepherd the project through your agency. Our frontline employee, she was actually an office assistant. She wasn't even a permit tech before we kind of gave her the responsibility of being the frontline employee to take in all the permits. We had a lot of good initial meetings on how the process should go, and we involved her in all of them so she could understand why the process was set up that way. And then we had interactive training, not only with her, but with other staff all in the room at the same time, so everyone could hear what everybody's issues were with the process, and then we continued to tinker and adjust the process to suit our needs. But when she has an issue, I made it clear to her that she needs to communicate that issue to me immediately so that we can come up with a solution. And by doing that, she kind of has taken the role of permit administrator by the horns, and she's the one that will send the emails to people. You haven't reviewed this permit. She's the one that communicates directly with the public. Your permit hasn't been finalized. You haven't gotten an inspection. All these other things, where she had no knowledge of that before. But it was important that you provided support to her or whoever it is at the beginning so that they can, one, understand the process and why you're moving to this type of program to do permitting, but also so that they can feel like they have some ownership of the process. I think keeping them involved is probably, if not the most important thing. Otherwise, they're not going to appreciate why the process is there and how important it is overall. Again, as I stated during my portion, it was the perception of the building department that people had an issue with, but people always referred to it as the city. The city has this issue. The city's hard to get along with. The city. And I made sure and made it clear to her at the time that, not to put pressure on her, but just so she understood that when the department would make a mistake or the department would have an issue, they were going to say the city, not the building department. And having them understand that, I think, helped craft the processes needed, but also gave them an appreciation of what they were doing mattered.
Fantastic. Thanks, Jerome. This next one is for you as well. This one's from Eric. How did you guys tackle going back into old records and digitizing them and getting them into the system? For small counties, that can be a real challenge to get those old records in the system.
I couldn't agree more. So this is actually like a two-part question. First of all, part of the reason the city chose SmartGov was the old database that they were kind of using that had some records in it. It only had building records. It wasn't able to be used by other departments. The source code for that was able to be translated to SmartGov. So some of the records were able to be transferred digitally. But those were more just notes and just general project information. They weren't plans or anything along those lines. The actual files, we had to obviously dedicate people to go through and scan those. So we created a historical record permit that was basically a holding permit for all the prior permit records. So it would be like going to the filing cabinet. It'd be like going to the filing cabinet and pulling that record out. Instead, you didn't have to do it, and it was available to everybody. And the city, we would get various people through work programs, interns, and we utilized them as much as we could just to scan records. And the building department, just the building records, was like a whole room of filing cabinets. And I would say probably about 20, 25 filing cabinets, and I think they're down to 2 because most of the building records have been scanned. And now it's also a hardware issue in making it easy for people to scan stuff. At a lot of offices, maybe you have the copier that does batch scanning, but the city also invested over a matter of years money to buy desktop scanners for people so that if they pulled a file, our office policy was if you went and pulled a file and it wasn't scanned and you were just pulling information out of it, it was your duty to go and scan it. And it doesn't take very long, but the value of actually scanning it for the bigger picture, which everybody needs to understand, is invaluable. So you could also hire maybe a firm to digitize records, but you still have to put them in the system in some way. And staff's responsibility was to put them in the system. Again, it's a small department. We may only get like one extra help person, but that's what their primary task was just scanning files. But now, for the most part, almost all the building files are in SmartGov, and it's very easy to pull up historical records.
That's terrific. Thanks, Jerome. This next one's for Sam. Can you expand on how this helps public works and work orders? And I know we have a separate solution for that. Maybe you could touch on that for a moment, Sam.
Mm-hmm. Sure. So throughout the webinar, I think there are a lot of common themes. Today we were focused more on the community development side of things, but citizen engagement doesn't just stop there. I know working with public works, utility departments, in addition to community development, there are some needs for getting citizen requests, being able to manage the work order request and work order process. So like Damien said, we do have a module set up specifically for public works, and definitely something that we can expand a little bit further with you, Dennis, if you're interested. But that is something that manages work orders from start to finish, handles the reporting, similar to some of the topics that we talked about today from the community development side.
And then
Perfect.
Can I
Thanks,
add
Sam.
something to that too?
Go for it.
What we did in our work orders is you can also assign values so that maybe, we have graffiti abatement, and they use, you know, paint, they use equipment, and what they would do is they would we had a dollar amount assigned to maybe each gallon of paint they would use or whatever, and what we would have the staff person do was input how much paint they were using for budgeting purposes. And you can do that with equipment in terms of how long equipment's being used, maybe what the cost is, how much material is being used, what the cost is, for better budgeting purposes. Or I know a lot of public works and engineering departments have grants that they get where they have to document, you know, those type of expenditures in their reimbursement requests for the grant, and you can do that with the public work orders. So.
All right, perfect. Thanks for that, Jerome. We have time for maybe one or two more. This next one is for you as well, Jerome. What citizen engagement did you do before, during, and after deployment?
Well, in order to adopt the contract to enter into it, we had obviously a public meeting before the city council where we discussed what we were doing. So we had multiple public meetings where we kind of gave progress reports in terms of we're adopting it, and then we gave maybe like a 1-year progress report at the city council in terms of what progress had been made. Additionally, a lot of the reports are available, the permitting reports. If people just ask to sign up for some of the permitting reports, we'll send them to them in terms of maybe what's been approved. The public portal is made available so that folks can check in on projects. And then we have handouts at the counter for people in case they want more information. We also ask applicants when they come in, you know, how involved do you want to be in your permitting? Do you want a portal account? Because you have to sign people up in order to see it, to see their permits. But we ask them, are you interested in a portal account? How much business are you going to be doing? So it's kind of a, you know, does this size fit for each applicant? But we try and promote it as much as we can and let people know that, hey, you have this ability to track things, whether you're just a watchdog type of person and you want to see what's going on, or you're a contractor and you want to see where your permits are in the process. We constantly engage people at the counter, but we also do kind of public displays of the implementation and the progress made by the departments.
Okay, fantastic. And we'll just do one last quick question. This one is for you, Sam. It's from Julie, and I answered Julie through the chat window here, but maybe just for the benefit of the audience. Is SmartGov an ERP software, or does it link to an existing ERP system?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really good question. So I'd say one of the biggest differentiators with SmartGov is that it is specifically built around your operations for permitting, inspections, code enforcement, licensing, and recurring inspections. So what we typically do is we link to an existing ERP, and typically that's like a finance tie-in to allow you guys to transfer fees that are collected for permits and things like that.
Okay,
so,
fantastic.
Yes.
Very helpful. All right, well, with that, we're going to conclude today's event. Thank you, Jerome and Sam, for a fantastic session. If you would like more information, please feel free to contact us. A number of different ways you can do that, that you can reference here on the slide. And also in your console, you should see some additional resources. You can reference some videos, a written case study from the city of Delano that Jerome went over today, if you'd like to reference that for more information and for your records. So again, we thank you for your time, and we look forward to seeing you at our next event.